There are four great questions in life. Every religion in the world tries to answer these four fundamental questions. And these will be quiz questions. What are the four great questions of life? So Heidi, write that down. The questions are, who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going when I die? Now, if you think about it, atheism tries to give an answer to those four fundamental questions, don't they? The Buddhists try to give an answer to that. Every religion is really a worldview, a way of looking at the world. Roland, did you get a notebook? No. No? Who's got this? Heidi, you got the spares there? Hand one back to Roland. And I show the questions first. I don't dwell on it long. I don't even normally give them long enough to write it down, because I go right into the fact that there are two ways to answer these questions. Two opposite ways to answer them, depending upon how you view the world. And the two worldviews are people who look at the world and say, it's amazing. A Big Bang made this from nothing. That's called the humanist worldview, which basically says there is no God, so we must be God because we're the highest evolved creature. That's the humanist worldview, which I have here. The evolution or humanist worldview of history says it all began 20 billion years ago. It just created itself. There is no creator. The other worldview is people who look at the world and say, well, it's incredible design. There must be a designer, a very smart designer. That is called the creationist worldview, which I have right here, the creation worldview. These are basically the only options. Somebody made the world, or nobody made the world. There's no other options. Now, if you believe somebody made the world, then of course there's a lot of options within this category. Was it Allah or Buddha or Jehovah, or who was it? Okay, that gets into a whole other argument of which God made the world, and when did he make it, and how did he make it, is another set of arguments. But basically I'm settling it into two camps. Either there is a creator or there isn't a creator. And so that kind of gets it, lays the groundwork for where I'm going to be going with my seminar. I say there's two worldviews. And which of these views you choose to adopt will determine how you answer the four great questions of life. And these two worldviews, creation and evolution, are absolutely at war with each other. Who am I? And what am I worth? Then I say, now, if evolution is true, if this theory is true, what are we worth anyway? Nothing. We're a bunch of chemicals, right? That's all we are, is a bunch of chemicals that got together by chance. You're nothing but a piece of protoplasm that washed up on the beach one day. To make it worse, you're part of the problem, because you are one of the polluters of the environment. Now think about it. If evolution is true, then the way it's supposed to work is a species is supposed to get up to a certain population level, and if there are weak ones or inferior ones, they should be killed off. And the reason we got these folks going around trying to thin down the population or wipe out, a genocide, my race is better than your race, so I'm going to kill all of you, is because of this evolution thinking. Because if evolution is true, honestly, folks, we aren't worth a thing. There is no value to human life. Hitler was a strong believer in evolution. And so, who are you? You're not important. Really, this philosophy of evolution is not just a dumb theory, folks. It's dangerous. And I've dedicated my life to exposing the ridiculousness of this theory, because I think it is not just dumb, it is indeed dangerous. Because you're not worth a thing if evolution is true. You're certainly not important. Second question, where did I come from? Everybody wants to know this. I mean, that's why they had the famous movie Roots. Where did I come from anyway? Well, let's go back before roots. Let's go to seed. Okay, where did we come from anyway? If evolution is true, we came from a Big Bang. Now, where did that come from? Well, they don't know. They're searching for the answer. There is no answer, okay? If evolution is true, we came from at this point I try to throw in some more jokes. I say we came from a cosmic burp about 20 billion years ago. We just got belched into existence. The universe did. Why am I here? Everybody would like to know, what's the purpose of my life? Kids don't have to get very old and they start wondering, what's my purpose, you know? Why am I here? And then I say, if evolution is true, there is no purpose to life. So you might as well have fun. Eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow we die. What was the famous beer commercial years ago? Get all the gusto you can get. You only go around once, you know. And honestly, that is the correct answer if evolution is true. If evolution is true, how do you tell right from wrong? What is sin, for that matter? There's no such thing as sin if the evolution theory is true. Because after all, we're nothing but a bunch of chemicals. Okay, fourth and final question of the 4 great questions of life. Where am I going when I die? Everybody realizes we're mortal, we're going to die. So this is an important question that everybody thinks about. And every religion tries to give an answer to this. What do the Hindus teach in their worldview? Well, you're going to be resurrected into something else. You know, you're going to be reincarnated. Everybody has an opinion of what's going to happen to them when they die, don't they? Do you think some of those opinions are wrong? Yeah, most of them, right? So one of our jobs as Christians, if we believe we have the truth, then our job is to teach everybody else what that truth is. It's a battle of worldviews. And we're trying to get them converted over to the creation worldview. The Bible says there were green herbs over all the earth. Genesis 1:29. I think there were plants from pole to pole. You know, when they went down to Antarctica, they discovered frozen leaves. There are no trees in Antarctica, and yet thousands of leaves are found deposited there, 250 miles from the South Pole. Today, the Earth is 70% underwater. Only 3% of planet Earth is habitable for mankind. The rest is underwater, deserts, ice caps, or just plain cold like it is up here in Wisconsin. 3% habitable for mankind. The Bible says God formed it to be inhabited. That's why He did it. I think the pre-flood world was loaded with trees from pole to pole. We cover lots more on that on video number 6. A layer of water above the atmosphere would block out the harmful rays of the sun. See, the sun puts off a lot of stuff besides light. It puts off gamma rays and X-rays and beta rays, and all them ray boys come down here, and they're kind of hard on your carcass. X-rays, particularly, are dangerous. How many have ever had an X-ray before? I broke 9 bones growing up. You go to the hospital, and they say, take off all your clothes and put this little gown on. They give you that little tiny gown that doesn't quite come together in the back, you know, it's kind of embarrassing. And they say, now walk down the hall about 12 miles. And on the left, you'll see the X-ray room. Well, if you make it all that way, they'll say, oh, we're so glad you made it. Would you please lay on this table? And they just got the table out of the freezer a few minutes before you got there. How many been on that same table? You know which one I'm talking about. It's ice cold. And he puts this weird machine on top of you and says, okay, now take a deep breath. Hold it. And then he runs out in the hall. He says, hey, Doc, come here. Is this machine dangerous? He says, oh, no, it's harmless. He says, how does it work, Doc? He says, well, when I mash the button, X-ray bullets come out of that machine, and they're going to blow right through your carcass like a machine gun, and we're going to blow you full of holes. They're tiny, though. You won't feel a thing. Actually, they're going to make a shadow of what's inside your body, a reverse image, which explains why so many radiologists have a negative outlook on life. We're going to blow you full of holes. And you say, well, Doc, if this is so harmless, how come you run out in the hall? Well, he knows long-term exposure to X-rays is dangerous. Many folks don't realize, though, we're getting X-rayed by the sun right now. The sun's X-rays are coming right through that roof, right through your body, and blowing you full of holes inside the building. Except on cloudy days, because water stops X-rays. And concrete stops X-rays, but this roof does not stop X-rays. And your skin feels the full force of those X-rays. You're getting blasted with millions of holes all day long, every day of your life. Your body has to fix the damage. No big deal. You do it all the time. You don't even think about it. But after 50 or 60 or 70 years, everybody around you starts to notice you are losing the battle for damage control. Your skin begins to wrinkle up. You say, Brother Hovind, I don't want to get old and wrinkled up. Okay. You say, Brother Hovind, I don't want to get old and wrinkled. Well, I'm sorry. If you get old, you're going to get wrinkled, okay? But I don't think they did before the flood. You know, before the flood, the Bible says the people lived to be over 900 years old. Now, there's one guy that travels around the country. He claims he's a creationist, but he says, now, folks, they didn't really live to be 900. They counted every month as a year. That's an even bigger miracle. Enoch was 65 when he begat Methuselah. Two of these guys were 65. Let's see, if you divide that by 12, he's 5.5 when he became a daddy. I don't think so, no. They really were living to be 900, and they were getting bigger. Here's Me by Robert Wadlow, the tallest man in this century, 8'11½", had a size 37 shoe. Pretty good understanding. Goliath was 6 cubits and a span. It makes him just a little taller than Robert Wadlow. We would consider 9 feet tall gigantic. But I think before the flood, they might have got bigger than that. Here's a skeleton of a man found in a coal mine in Italy, 11 feet 6 inches tall. Well, long, not tall. He's laying down now. 11'6". How would you like to have that guy on your basketball team? Hey, throw the ball to Herman. Okay, Herman, drop it in right there. Okay, now come on back here and block off the whole court. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes the women get upset with me, and they say, Mr. Hovind, you said that was a skeleton of a man. Maybe it was a woman. That's a fair question, but I taught biology and anatomy. I happen to know how to tell the difference between a male and female skeleton. It is not the number of ribs. Only Adam was missing a rib, and only for a short time. Did you know there's only one bone in the human body that'll grow back if you take it out? The lower rib. You'd almost think God knew what he was doing if you didn't know better. Anyway, there are 2 ways to tell the difference between a male and female skeleton. One is to look at the feet. If they're pointed toward the mall, it's a woman. The other way to tell the difference is to look at the process on the temporomandibular joint. If that joint is worn out more, it's a woman. One lady said, that's because we have to tell you men everything twice. You don't listen first time. Guilty, guilty, guilty. A lot of folks don't realize the Roman Emperor Maximus was 8'6". That's where we get our word maximum from, or Maximus's boot. He was a big boy. You know, a skeleton 9 feet 8 inch tall was found in Brewersville, Indiana, back 100 years ago. Skeletons 9 feet tall found in Nevada. You don't hear about those in your public school, do you? Huge bones, similar in every respect to man's, were found embedded in thick layers of clam shells. As many as 20 skeletons were found. Every skeleton was fully 9 feet high, back in 1902, in Louisiana. A skeleton 10 feet tall found in Humboldt Lake, Nevada. The legend in Guam is that giant people built the latte stones there. In Walkertown, Indiana, 8 giants, ranging from 8 to 9 feet long, all wearing heavy copper armor, were found. Through the bungling of the diggers and the disinterest of the museum establishment, the discoveries were scattered and lost. Why would a museum not be interested in 9-foot skeletons? A 12-foot skeleton found in Lompoc Rancho, California, by some soldiers. The Indians got upset because they had disturbed a grave, so they reburied it. A 12-foot skeleton was found in Tucson, Arizona. The guy had 6 toes, bird-shaped headdress. Who was moving these giant rocks anyway? That's a camel in front of it for scale, folks. This is a 39-pound copper axe head. Swing a 10-pound sledge for 20 minutes and tell me how you'd like to swing a 39-pound axe head. This is a stone that I've heard was designed to be held between the thumb and finger for chipping. I think there's a lot of evidence there were giants in the earth in those days. We've been working for several years on a book about giants in the earth. Should be coming out here one of these days. A friend of mine and I are writing this book together. The hiding discoveries about giants, because it goes against the evolution theory. See, evolution says we started off tiny and we're getting bigger and better and stronger and smarter. I think the Bible indicates we started off bigger and we're getting smaller and weaker and dumber. Now, it's true in the last 100 years there's been an increase of about 6 inches in average height, only in industrialized countries. And that's because of increased nutrition, food supply, better sanitation, nothing to do with evolution. This is a skull from Winnemucca, Nevada. They finally took it down a few months ago because so many folks were stopping because of my seminar saying, hey, I want to see the giant skull. But there was a giant human skull on display for quite some time. This is a normal human thumb bone. Underneath is a giant human thumb bone. This was found right near Mount Ararat in Turkey. The government of Turkey claims they have found the grave of Noah. The skeleton was 12 feet tall. That would make his cubit a little bigger, wouldn't it? How big was that ark? People say, one man and 3 boys could not build a boat that big. Oh, you didn't see those boys. Hey, Bubba, bring me that tree, would you? It's a thigh bone. We've got in our museum in Pensacola a replica of a thigh bone, 47-inch femur, indicating the man would have been about 13 feet tall. That's pretty big. There's a jawbone in a hotel in Turkey on display right now, 6.5 inches across the TMJs. Any one of you could put your head inside and rattle it back and forth inside the jawbone. In Wasaki, Wisconsin, 100 years ago, giant skeletons were found in a burial mound. One of the skulls was 3 times the size of ordinary humans. The Bible says there were giants in the earth in those days. I think it says that because there were giants in the earth in those days. So here we got the textbooks teaching the kids about cavemen. The Bible says we're made in God's image. Yet the textbook says this is Grandpa. What about all these cavemen the kids learn about anyway? Well, we'll cover that in the next session. Where does the Stone Age fit into the Bible? Well, I think right after the flood, people got off the ark and they faced a real hostile climate. Things had changed. Noah couldn't tell his grandson to go to the hardware store and get him a shovel. There were no hardware stores. You would have to make stone tools because that you can make pretty quick. It takes a while to dig the iron ore out of the ground and melt it down and make the steel tools. So meanwhile, you're going to starve to death. They probably had a Gilligan's Island situation for the first few generations. Just, a lot of smart folks with not much technology. You'd have to rebuild civilization. So they would make stone tools. And there are cultures today still making stone tools. I think during the time right after the flood, there would be an ice age lasting for several hundred years. We covered that on video 6. During that time, people would wander around following herds of animals, and you don't want to carry a pile of rocks with you. So you wait till you catch up with the herd, and then you make your tools right on the spot. You kill the animals and leave the tools behind. You follow the herd someplace else. That way you're not carrying 50 pounds of rocks with you. It's quicker to make a new one after you get there. So a lot of times they find these crude-looking instruments, and they'll say, well, this is an older society. No, these people are in a bigger hurry. That's what it means. And if they have really neat-looking arrowheads, they probably had more time to sit there and shape them. Nothing to do with intelligence. But not only were the people living longer before the flood, animals were living longer also, and growing much bigger, I believe. This is a hornless rhinoceros, 18 feet tall. Some people say, oh, that's a prehistoric animal. No, there's no such thing as prehistoric. Did you know that word was added to the dictionary about 100 years ago? I got some old dictionaries and looked up prehistoric. 1766, it wasn't there. No such thing as prehistoric. I got a dictionary from 1860. There was no prehistoric in there. There's no such thing as prehistoric. You see, there are things that are pre-flood, but that's not prehistoric. Pre-flood, things were different. I think there was a canopy of water that increased air pressure, which would make animals grow much larger, especially insects. See, insects are limited today on how big they can get based upon the fact that they don't have enough air to breathe. They breathe through their skin. Insects that grow in oxygen-rich waters grow 1,000 times heavier than their counterparts just because they can grow bigger and they have more oxygen. See, insects breathe through their skin. If an animal increases in size, its surface area to volume ratio drops off. As an animal gets smaller in size, the surface area compared to the volume increases. So insects that breathe through their skin simply can't get huge today. And yet fossil insects are found that are huge. Fossil cattails have been found 60 feet tall. Fossil donkey found in Texas, 9 feet high at the shoulder. Everything's bigger in Texas. Fossil buffalo horns have been found, indicating buffalo used to get huge. Show me a home where that buffalo roams. I'll show you a wreck. Deer antlers, 12-foot span. Some of you hunters are thinking, wow. How many folks here go try to shoot Bambi's daddy? Come on now, let me see. There we go. And eat them too, amen. All right, good. Kangaroo fossils have been found that are 10 feet tall. Wombats the size of a mini little car. They found in a prehistoric goose stood as tall as an elephant and weighed half a ton. That's a big goose. Fossil beavers have been found 8 feet long. Right here in Wisconsin, a guy found a beaver jaw over in Johnson Creek, Wisconsin. I met the guy. There's his phone number, Jim Erb. He said, yeah, that beaver would have been 7 or 8 feet long. That's a big beaver. In Ohio, a 6-foot beaver skeleton was found. I think before the flood, the trees were bigger, which means you need bigger beavers to chew them down. Probably just about everything was bigger back in those days. Salamanders got 6 feet long. Greater air pressure from the canopy would also increase the amount of oxygen getting into the water, which means now more fish can survive, because fish have to breathe air underwater through their gills. Well, increasing air pressure diffuses more gas into the water. A shark, here I'm holding a shark's jaw that I got in Hawaii, that shark was probably about 12 feet long. If a tooth of a shark is 1 inch long, the shark was about 15 feet. Kind of a rough average, depending on species, of course. I've got a replica here on the table of a fossil shark's tooth, indicating sharks before the flood probably got 80 feet long. Now, the movie Jaws had a 25-foot great white. Folks, you'd have to use Jaws for bait to catch a Carcharodon megalodon. I think things were a little bigger before the flood. Much bigger, actually. Carl Baugh in Texas is raising piranha in a pressurized chamber with increased electromagnetic field, trying to simulate pre-flood conditions. His fish are getting 4 times the size of normal. Call him up or go visit his place in Glen Rose, Texas. If you're ever driving across Texas, you might as well stop, because there's nothing else to see as you drive across Texas. Turtles got to be huge. That's a big turtle on the left. Oyster shells were found in the top of the mountains in Peru, 2 miles above sea level. Some of the oyster shells were 11.5 feet wide. 500 petrified oysters. You should see the pearls. Now, did you know petrified clams in the closed position are found all over the world? I've got one here on the table. These kind are found on top of Mount Everest. I would like to point out, Your Honor, Mount Everest is a little ways from the beach. Secondly, clams do not climb mountains very well. Thirdly, when a clam dies, it opens. You can walk along the beach and find 1,000,000 seashells. You hardly ever find a matched pair. The only way to get one closed and petrified would be to have him buried alive. Now, I don't think the water was over Mount Everest. I think Mount Everest was under the water. Big difference. Psalm 104 says, during the last part of the flood, the mountains arose, the valley sank down, the water rushed off. We'll cover more on that on video 6. You know, fossilized birds have been found 13 feet tall. How'd you like to have that for Thanksgiving dinner? And lizards got huge. Did you know reptiles grow all their life? They never stop growing. I think before the flood, when people lived to be 900, the reptiles would get to be really big. Really big. I think dinosaurs were big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard. And that would be a terrible lizard if it's about 80 feet long. You can buy these at the pet store today. It's called a Jackson chameleon. Got 3 horns on his face. I bet something similar to that, if you let it live 900 years, it'd get to be a triceratops. Now, I don't think today's lizards would grow to be dinosaurs if you let them live long enough. I think there's been any more than, you could take all the Chihuahuas today and crossbreed them and end up with a Great Dane. I think it's just the genes for largeness are gone for whatever reason. But I think they're certainly in the same family of animals. Dinosaur means terrible lizard. Dinosaur and human bones have been found together in Peru, in South America, several different places, and in South Carolina, and in Texas, and in Brazil, and in Russia. Human hands and dinosaur bones found in the same rock strata. Dinosaur and mammal remains found together, according to New Scientist magazine, February of 2001. The Ica stones in Peru show humans and dinosaurs together. We've got pictures right here. If you want to get some of the articles about the Ica stones, or go to our website, drdino.com. There's quite a bit of information about the Ica stones. There are about 20 of those in America. Now, we've got 3 of them in our museum, 3 of the actual ichthyostones. They're real expensive to get out of the country down there in Peru, but a rich guy bought 3 of them, donated them to our museum. Said, yay, we'll take them. In Glen Rose, Texas, south of Dallas, that's where Dr. Ball's museum is, south of Fort Worth, they've got a river running through town called the Paluxy River. Back in 1908, the river flooded, and it got so bad it ripped off the bottom of the river, which was solid limestone, sort of like concrete almost. It ripped off a 2-foot layer of limestone and moved it 20 miles downstream. Underneath was another layer of limestone, so it's no big deal. But that layer underneath contained hundreds of dinosaur footprints. They actually made a state park out of it. I've got the book right here, Dinosaur Valley State Park. If you want to come take a look at some of the pictures. They chiseled out lots of the tracks because they knew erosion would tear them up over the next 20, 30 years, would destroy them. They moved a lot of the tracks to museums. They cut out big blocks of stone and moved them and set them up under dinosaur skeletons. So it looks like the dinosaur just walked there. Some of the tracks are pretty big. Here's a kid taking a bath in one. Right next to the dinosaur tracks, frequently they found human footprints. Roland Bird was in charge of the group of guys digging out the tracks, and he reported there were 15 to 20 inch long, clearly defined human footprints with the dinosaur tracks. Human tracks and dinosaur tracks together? Hundreds of dinosaur track sites have been found around the world. Finding dinosaur tracks is not that unusual. Many have been found. There's some in Holyoke, Massachusetts, some in Connecticut. They found Colorado on Red Rock Amphitheater's got a bunch of dinosaur tracks. But to find human tracks with them is pretty unusual. In 1884, a geologist named Flint was working for the Peabody Museum at Harvard University. Down in Nicaragua, he discovered a layer containing fossilized human tracks 16 to 24 feet below the surface. He described the tracks in 1884 and said these footprints are from 1/2 to 3 inches in depth, and none exceeded 18 inches. You can read the whole description for yourself on our website about the tracks found in Nicaragua. Human tracks are found. But now, museums are real careful about mentioning anything about this because that might support the creation view. So stuff kind of gets squelched or hidden on this topic now. But human tracks with dinosaur tracks have been found a few times. There's some pictures here if you want to see a trail of human tracks crossing a trail of dinosaur tracks. This is the Taylor Trail from Glen Rose, Texas. I've been there 4 times, talked to many folks who studied it. Carl Ball lives there, studied it avidly. People say, how can you have human tracks together? Well, one of the best human tracks still had the dermal ridges, like the fingerprints on the toes. You could see them. They were extremely clear for the first few months. And once it gets exposed, it starts to dry out and weather, and pretty soon it starts to become a little less clear, and then pretty soon it's nothing but an oval. And over time, it turned into a 3-toed dinosaur track. And some of the creationist groups have backed off talking about the Paluxy tracks because they say, well, maybe they were just dinosaur tracks all along. Well, no. A human stepped in where the dinosaur track was. That's the logical place to walk when you're going following somebody through the mud or through the snow. You step where they already walked. You folks get snow up here? You know about snow, right? Okay. Yeah, you walk where somebody else already walked. They did the work for you. So no, I think they really were human tracks. Here's one inside a dinosaur track right there. Logical place to step. There's a good book about it called Texas Tracks and Artifacts if you want to get more information on the human and dinosaur tracks together. We sell castings of one of the human tracks. It's a size 24. Check our catalog. You can get one of those for hang on your wall in your office. That'll start a conversation. You can steer that conversation toward creation. We had a kid with a size 18 tried to fill up our 24 track, couldn't quite do it. They chiseled out some of the rock ledges and said, we think the tracks are fake, some of the skeptics did. When they removed the rock, they found more tracks underneath the undisturbed limestone. And they said, okay, who made these tracks anyway, under the rock here? They sawed one of the tracks across the toes. Looking at it endways, you could see there were depressions where the toes had squeezed the mud down, distorting the lamination lines. These are not carved in, they're not erosion marks, they're compression prints, quite obviously. There's much more on that on the website omniology.com. The man's stride between steps was about 6 or 7 feet. I would rip my britches every time trying to do that. How do you get human tracks and dinosaur tracks together? Well, one preacher, he's assistant pastor in Arizona, he wrote me a letter. He said, Brother Hovind, I grew up in Glen Rose, Texas. He said, I went on an excavation with Dr. Carl Baugh. We were out there digging up these footprints, and Nova was there to film the dig. He said, there was an evolutionist who had been arguing with Dr. Baugh the entire time. Nova didn't film much of the tracks or the dig, but they did interview the evolutionist. He told them he had not seen anything there to disprove evolution. What he didn't tell the camera was he had refused to even turn around and look at the tracks we were working on. When they found some tracks, they would say, "Sir, would you video this?" "No, I don't want to see it." He wouldn't even look at it. He stood with his back to the tracks and the dig while making the statements. Nova knew the man had not looked at the tracks, but did not report that, nor did they give Dr. Ball equal airtime to respond. You see, folks, evolution is not part of science. It's a religion, and they defend their worldview with religious fervor and zeal. If it was real science, it would be open to all observations, but they totally, purposely discredit anything that goes against their theory. One guy said, "Well, maybe there was a dinosaur with feet like a human. That explains these tracks here." Oh, you never know. Could have been, you know. This guy said, "Finding dinosaur and human footprints together would counter evidence that humans evolved long after dinosaurs." I agree. "And would back up the claim that all species, including man, were created at one time." I agree. It sure would back up that claim. They don't want that claim to get out. This guy said, "Creationists have stated humans and dinosaurs were contemporaries in time. Were this momentous statement true, the names of its discoverers would thunder down the corridors of time as individuals who made one of the most outstanding discoveries of the 20th century. Well, I didn't discover it, but you can put my name on there. I believe that to be true." Yeah. There's more books about footprints in stone if you want to get more on this topic. I've heard the arguments on both sides. I still believe it is very true. Even a petrified hammer was found. Now, some people say, "Oh, they didn't have iron before the flood." Oh, they sure did. You better read your Bible. Tubal-Cain was an artificer in brass and iron. That's before the flood. This bell was found inside a lump of coal made of like a brass material. Coal, according to the textbooks, was formed 250 million years ago. According to the Bible, I think coal was formed in the flood 4,400 years ago. In Illinois, a lady broke open a lump of coal. There was a gold chain inside about 10 inches long. I called every person by the last name of Culp, C-U-L-P, I could find in Illinois. I spent hours calling all over, and several of them said, "Yeah, that was so-and-so, Uncle so-and-so, and that was years ago. I don't know what happened to it." I couldn't trace down what happened to the chain. But if anybody wants some research projects, start calling all the Culps and find out where that chain is. I'd like to have it for my museum in Pensacola, Florida. This iron pot was found inside a lump of coal. It's in a museum, Carl Baugh's museum in Texas. This thing was found in solid rock, supposed to be 600 million years old. Beautifully carved little trinket there. I was in Idaho preaching, and I went to Nampa, Idaho, to the museum. Years ago, somebody was drilling a well in Idaho, and they brought up this little doll from 300 feet down. In rock, supposed to be 12 million years old. I held it in my hand, little doll, obviously man-made. Batteries were found in Iraq from areas supposed to be 2,000 years old. Some people say, "Oh, they didn't have electricity before that." Oh, yeah, they did. The Egyptians knew about electricity. Here's a hieroglyphic showing the Egyptians using electricity, apparently to mummify a snake or something. I think ancient man was real smart. Workers digging for copper, they found a copper arrowhead and human bones in a vein of silver. They're digging for silver and found human bones and an arrowhead. J.D. Whitney, the state geologist of California back in 1880, published a lengthy review of advanced stone tools found in California gold mines. The implements included spear points, mortars, and pestles. They were found deep in mine shafts underneath thick, undisturbed layers of lava. Here they are digging underneath a mountain, finding human tools. In rock, supposed to be, 55 million years old. The British Navy lost 1 million sailors to scurvy. Does anybody know what cured scurvy? Citrus, limes, fruit. They called them the limeys, didn't they? A simple vitamin cured a horrible disease. For many years, people died of beriberi or pellagra or rickets. They're all vitamin deficiency diseases. See, the Bible says God gave herb for the service of man and bread to strengthen man's heart. Bread strengthens your heart. That's what the Bible says. Well, it used to. Keep in mind, the love of money is the root of all evil. Somebody discovered years ago, the thing that makes the bread go bad are the oils in the bread. Vitamin E, lecithin, and omega-3 fatty acids. So they figured out a way to take out the oils in the flour and made white flour. This was done about 200 years ago. So they started making bread that would last for weeks. Back before that, you had to bake your bread every other day. Man, bread just wouldn't last very long. Remember the Bible talks about our daily bread? Interesting. Well, love of money, you know, you don't want to bake 30 loaves and sell 10 and have 20 go bad, so they would figure out why is it going bad, and let's fix it. They took out all the oils, and right away the bread started lasting longer. And right away people began having heart attacks, strokes, and circulation problems. Because they're connected. See, kids, the whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. Now, the white bread doesn't kill you, but the white bread fills you up, and it prevents you from getting all the vitamins you need. Because there's very little nourishment in white bread. So why is there suffering in the world? Well, Presley, I don't know. I can give you 4 reasons I've thought of. Maybe there's 20 more. If you think of one, let me know. Some of it is just plain natural suffering. Adam and Eve sinned and created this mess, and with their suffering, you can do nothing wrong, and you're still going to get old. Aren't you? And you're going to age, and you're going to die. Anybody know who that is? Robert Redford. Anybody know who that is? Robert Redford.
They'll kill him.
You're going to age, you're going to die. There's natural suffering. It just... Some suffering is because of willful sin. We create most of our own problems.
Yeah.
If a drunk driver is out driving on the highway and gets in a wreck and cuts off his arm, you cannot blame God for that. He did it himself, okay? Some people want to smoke cigarettes for 50 years and they die of lung cancer. Don't blame God for that. You did it. Some people don't take care of their health and they get suffering before. Okay, well, don't blame God. Some suffering is because of willful sin. Not all of it, but some of it is. How many of you have ever had some suffering in your life because you did something dumb? You did it to yourself, okay? Mother of baby killed by drunk driver helps others. The mother decided, I'm going to try to help others who've had somebody killed by a drunk driver. God didn't kill that baby. The drunk killed the baby. Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. How much suffering is there in the world because somebody else wants your money or wants somebody else's money? How much is theft or, sometimes at governmental level, they want, create lots of suffering for people because of the love of money.
Yeah.
So that's not God's fault. This is some evil person's fault. Now keep in mind, God keeps real careful records. Every idle word men shall speak, they shall give account thereof. It'll all be fixed one day, but meanwhile, there is just suffering sometimes, and it's because of somebody else. Nothing about DNA has helped with the evolution theory at all. DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, is the most complex molecule in the universe. Unbelievably complicated molecule. That little DNA molecule, average person has 50 trillion cells in their body with 46 of those little molecules in each cell. 46 chromosome strands in each cell of your body. If you extracted all of it, it would only fill about 2 tablespoons. But if you took those DNA strands and unwound them, stretched them out, tied them together, one person's DNA would reach from Earth to the moon and back over 500,000 times. Round trips to the moon. They say the DNA holds more information than all computer programs ever written by man combined. IBM models the newest computers after DNA. The quantity of information is so vast, we have to invent new numbers to measure it. Not terabytes, petabytes, or exabytes, yottabytes, and zettabytes. All the words uttered by everyone who ever lived would amount to 5 exabytes. And your DNA and your chromosome holds more information than that. It is so unbelievably complex. If you typed out the code found in your DNA, when you got done typing, you'd have enough books to fill Grand Canyon 78 times. That's the instructions to make you. I'd say you're pretty special. Quite a list of instructions to make you. David said, I will praise thee, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And he didn't have a microscope, and he could figure that out. Yeah. You know, from conception to birth, the baby adds 15,000 cells per minute to its body. Each one is more complicated than a space shuttle. How would you like to be in charge of the supply end, of supplying a factory that is producing 15,000 space shuttles a minute? And it's your job to make sure they have all the nuts and bolts and screws and everything they need to put that thing together. Some of you women are saying, boy, I did it, and that's hard too. Sometimes they want pickles in the middle of the night, you know. What are you building down there anyway, you know? The probability of one DNA happening by chance has been calculated to be 1 in 10 to the 119,000th power. That's a big number when you figure the entire visible universe is about 10 to the 28th inches in diameter. DNA has not proven anything that would help the evolution theory. It's been made the problem much, much, much worse. But let's just assume that the chromosome number means something and that, you know, it could evolve. Okay, well, then I did some research on this. I discovered penicillin has 2 chromosomes. That one had to evolve first. And then slowly, over millions of years, they got some more chromosomes, because they're complicated, you know, and turned into a fruit fly. You can see the similarity there. It's only got 8 chromosomes. And then very slowly, it evolved some more chromosomes and became either a tomato or a housefly. Very tough to tell the difference. They're identical twins, you know. And then very slowly, over millions of years, it evolved into either a P or a B. You can see the similarity there, you know, P, B, very similar. And slowly became lettuce, and then a carrot, and finally, when we got to 22 chromosomes, triplets. The possum, the redwood tree, and the kidney bean all have 22 chromosomes. Average scientists cannot tell them apart. Let's see, which one is which here? Okay, let's see, tree, possum, bean, and we have 46, folks. And if we can just get 2 more, the next step of human evolution, we're going to become a tobacco plant. I know some already smell like it. Sometimes I'll get on the elevator and I'll say, man, you're evolving, you're way ahead of me. And it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but we might get enough chromosomes someday to be either a dog or a chicken. They're twins too, you know. And then way down the road, you know, we're going to become a carp. They got double the chromosomes we do. And someday, star date 349572, we're going to become a fern. I was at a church one time, and this lady walked up to me afterwards, and she said, Mr. Hovind, I'm fern. I shook hands with that hand right there. I'll never wash it again. Hey, how come the evolutionists are always comparing things that fit their theory? Why don't they show us the things that don't fit their theory? Like, let's just say we're going to examine how things evolve based upon how long they lived. Well, we could arrange animals by how long they live, and we'll find out the hamster evolved first, slowly turned into a cat, and then a canary, and then a dog, and then a chimpanzee, and an alligator, elephant, horse, turtle, and human. We made it, folks. We made it. Let's arrange the animals based on how long they're pregnant, their gestation period. Well, in that case, the possum, only 13 days. How'd you like that, ladies? Only be pregnant for 13 days. Not bad, huh? Yeah, I'd have a bunch of kids in. Slowly evolved into a hamster, then a rat, then a rabbit, kangaroo, on down the list, and the elephant. 640 days. They are the winner. The most evolved creature on earth. Or maybe, you can see here the cat and the dog are identical twins, you know. Maybe we should arrange them based on how much they weigh in their adult form. Well, the shrew only weighs 4 grams. Slowly it became a mouse. And very slowly, over billions of years, became a whale. The whale's the most evolved now. Why don't they show us these charts, huh? And why is it that amphibians have 5 times more DNA than mammals, and some amoeba have 1,000 times more DNA? They don't tell us these things, because it doesn't fit their theory. It's impossible to arrange in any sort of evolutionary series based on just one little bit of facts. You better find all the facts. You find out this evolution theory fails miserably. But they tell the kids, we're going to think critically. Boys and girls, there are 20 kinds of amino acids. That's a fact. Explain how this fact supports the idea that all life shares a common ancestor. How's a Christian kid supposed to answer that for homework for Monday? Don't you see a built-in assumption in this question? That's not learning to think critically. Would the kid be allowed, teacher, to explain how this fact that all life forms have 20 amino acids, would the kid be allowed to say, maybe that proves the intelligence of a common designer? Maybe God gave all the animals the same basic 20 amino acids so that we don't have to just eat each other, you know. I mean, if they're all totally different, wildly different kinds, then we could only eat other humans. But see, God made it this way so the brown cow can eat the green grass and give the white milk and make the yellow butter, and I eat it and get the blonde hair. that the whole universe started 20 billion years ago with a big bang. And then they will say 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled down and developed a hard rocky crust. And then volcanoes started going off and the atmosphere developed and it rained on the rocks for several billion years, and finally turned into soup, and the soup came alive about 3 billion years ago. This is a simplification of what is in the textbooks. If you boil away all the fluff and feathers, this is what you get. They teach there was a big bang 20 billion years ago, the Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago, the rocks came alive 3 billion years ago. Some say 3.8, it depends on which textbook you're reading. And then this early life form slowly developed, evolved into all the different life forms that we have today. So to simplify it in a nutshell, everything today that's alive came from a rock. The rock came from a big bang, and the big bang came from where something exploded, but they don't know what. There are those who think there was a cosmic quirk where nothing became everything, and so basically nothing turned to everything, which turned to life. I'm not against science, I'm not against schools, I'm not against teachers. My brother's in his 34th year teaching public school. My mom retired from teaching public school. There's an awful lot of good, godly teachers in the system. Let's define some other terms now. The word evolution has at least 6 different meanings. And I've done 58 debates now, and if you're going to get into a debate on evolution with anybody, you better first define what you're talking about. Because this is a very slippery term, okay? First we have cosmic evolution. That would be the Big Bang. There is no evidence whatsoever for that. We'll get into that in just a moment. Then we'd have to have chemical evolution. See, the Big Bang supposedly made hydrogen. Well, how did we get 92 elements, plus the synthetic ones? I mean, how did the chemicals evolve? They don't talk about that much, but that would have to happen. Thirdly, we'd have to have stellar and planetary evolution. Did you know the stars would have to evolve? There's an awful lot of stars out there, folks, but nobody's ever seen one form. There's enough stars out there that everybody on Earth can personally own 2 trillion of them. We've never seen one star forming. We see them blow up from time to time. It's called a nova or a supernova. We've never seen one form. One professor told me one time, he said, well, we calculated in the laboratory that if 20 stars explode near each other, it'll produce enough energy to make a brand new star. I said, well, that's brilliant. You got to lose 20 to gain 1. Man, first place, that's all theoretical. We've never seen it happen, okay? And I think it is scientifically impossible. See, then we'd have to have organic evolution. That would be the origin of life. How did life get started from non-living material? Now, according to the evolution theory, that would have to happen somewhere along the line, long ago and far away. Life had to come from non-living material. And yet, we've never seen that happen. There is no evidence that it can happen. We'll talk about that in a minute. Fifthly, we would have macroevolution. That is where an animal changes into a different kind of animal. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. But the evolutionist believes a dog came from a rock. If you go back far enough in time, 4.6 billion years. Finally, we have microevolution. Now, I don't like this word, okay, because it gets people confused. I think we ought to just call it a variation. But microevolution happens, folks. That is a fact of science. Animals produce a variety of offspring, but it's always the same kind. The first 5 definitions of evolution are stupid. It doesn't happen. It's certainly not part of science. It's something you have to believe in. So I'm not going to read all these. I'm going to skip up to something. Some of these are really good. I just cut and pasted a whole bunch of them. So Harvard says cosmic evolution is part of the evolution theory, and so is stellar, the origin of stars, and chemical. You'd have to get all the chemicals. That's one of the ones I mentioned. Let's see. Number 2, chemical evolution. I've been saying that for years. Biological evolution. Life has to get started somehow from non-living material. Has to. Until the present. So now these guys want to limit it down to after life starts. That's what they've been doing in my comment section. Well, it only takes place after life gets started. No, you really got to have the other ones first. Okay, you have to have stellar evolution, which Harvard agrees. Chemical evolution, which they agree. Cosmic evolution. I think you're in the minority, Edward. Come on, get up to speed here, bud. Okay, here's from... I did a debate one time in university, and afterwards this lady came walking down the aisle. Boy, she was mad. The smoke was coming out her nose. She was angry at me. She came walking straight up toward me. I said, Lord, I'm coming home. She walked up, put her hands on her hips, and she said, tonight, you told everybody that we believe we come from a rock. We do not believe that. I said, ma'am, you need to calm down. You're going to blow a gasket. I said, ma'am, do you believe in evolution? She said, yes, I do. I'm a professor here at the university. I said, well, ma'am, would you please tell me then where we came from? She said, we came from a macromolecule. I said, and where did that come from? She said, from the oceans, from the prebiotic soup. I said, and where did that come from? She said, it rained on the rocks for millions of years. You could see it was slowly dawning on her. You know, I do believe I come from a rock. Yes, ma'am, you do. Better be careful going outside. Don't step on Grandpa. Information come from? There's a whole host of questions that are a whole lot harder for you to answer than in the beginning God. Where's information come from? This universe is not just random molecules circulating around. I mean, it carries information. Just like a book is so much more than ink on a paper, it carries information. And the DNA is more than just chemicals. It's information. So the evolutionist never answers the question, where did this information come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the matter itself come from? And you gripe about my belief. I believe by faith in the beginning God. I know, I admit I don't understand that. But you believe hundreds of things by faith. You don't even understand that you're believing by faith. You think matter is either eternal or can create itself. What's the two choices? How did matter get here? The world is here. Where did the matter come from? Did it just happen by itself, or is it all just imaginary? We're not really here at all. You're faced with the option of, we're not really here, this is all just our imagination, or it had a beginning, or matter is eternal, which is both of the second two options are in violation of the obvious laws of thermodynamics. Matter doesn't create itself. And everything degrades over time. So either it had a beginning or it didn't. If it had a beginning, then what was before the beginning? I mean, there's so many thousands of things you take by faith. I say in the beginning God, and you say, well, this matter somehow either was always here or created itself. And then this matter somehow became alive. And then this first living thing learned how to reproduce. And then it learned how to make something other than its kind. I mean, even though nobody's ever seen that, nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Or you mentioned about, the fact that a wolf and a fox and a dog coming from a common ancestor off Noah's Ark in only 4,400 years. For heaven's sake, you believe they came from a rock. I mean, come on. I don't think my theory is that silly at all. So, my answer to your question is still the same. I believe in the beginning God. I do take that by faith. Here's the major difference that I don't think you're going to understand. I admit mine is a religion. They do not admit theirs is a religion. They want you to think what they believe is science. If I asked you to explain how computers came to be, but you cannot use man as your answer, I only want a purely naturalistic explanation for the origin of computers. Purely naturalistic. The answer has to lie within the computer. How did these molecules get together? How did this data get together? How did these plastic molecules come together and the different silicone chips? How did it happen? Your answer has to lie in the computer. I've already eliminated the only obvious answer to the problem at the beginning by my definition. They're trying to eliminate the only logical answer to the question by their definition of science. They want to define science as things that we can observe and test and demonstrate in the natural world. Okay, well then that eliminates both evolution and creation. Both are unobserved. We don't see anything change. We don't see anything created from nothing. Here's the problem. Both creation and evolution are religious. I admit mine's a religion. They don't admit theirs is a religion. They cannot explain where the original matter came from. They can't explain where the laws came from. They can't explain where life came from. And yet they want to teach that in the science classes and have our kids learn that. And they're upset about creation getting into the classroom? They better look in the mirror and see what's in those textbooks now. We're teaching all kinds of pagan things that cannot be proven. We're teaching the frog turned into the prince. I taught biology. You should see the charts. There's the frog at the bottom and the prince at the top. It's the same fairy tale, and that has never been demonstrated. So if their argument is we shouldn't have creation in the classroom because it is not scientific, I'll say, I agree. Let's get evolution out for the very same reasons. Evolution is not scientific either. And unless they're going to teach both, they should teach neither one. I say, well, a majority of scientists believe in evolution. The majority of people believed the world was flat at one time too. They didn't flatten it out. And you can't use majority opinion as an argument at all. To be taken on faith. That's right. Evolution is taken on faith. You imagine that it happened, and you have very strong faith, much stronger than mine, to believe everything came from a dot smaller than a period on a page. I tell you what, I would defy you to squeeze just this rock into a dot smaller than a period on a page. You want to put the whole Earth in there? And all the planets and all the stars? See, that dot had to have not only all the mass, it had to have all the energy. and all the heat. What is the total heat combined of all the stars and the sun? A lot. And you think that dot exploded and made everything. Now hold it. Galaxies are spinning. What would it take to get something the size of how much energy would it take? How hard would you have to push to get a galaxy spinning? What would it take to get the Earth spinning? The Earth weighs like, what, 76 sextillion tons, I think, is the estimated mass of the Earth. To get it spinning 1,038 miles an hour at the equator, how much energy would that take? And if this has been going on for billions and billions of years, don't you think it would start to get tired after a while and slow down? And all the planets, wouldn't they? And the sun and all the galaxies, they're all spinning enormous amounts of energy. Would have to be in that initial dot. Place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. If God's got 10 angels just keeping track of you, writing down everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do, and Judgment Day, those angels are called up to testify, and they read everything in those books. What would happen to you at this great white throne judgment if everything you ever said, everything you ever thought, and everything you ever did was read out loud for the whole world to see, in court with God himself as the judge? If that thought makes you nervous, and it should, let me tell you what you can do about it. The blood of Jesus Christ, God's Son, cleanseth us from all sin. He will surely reprove you if ye do secretly accept persons. Shall not his excellency make you afraid? Aren't you afraid of God? I can't believe some of these evolutionists making comments on our YouTube channel. Aren't you afraid of God? They're not. Yet.